Today we are going to be watching a video about some of the most overpowered weapons from Fortnite's history. This video is from Tyler. His channel will be linked down in the description below. And I love kind of content like this, kind of going over some of the more like just throughout Fortnite history. We have like 6 years now, so there's a lot to talk about. If you guys played back then, it'll probably be interesting to like remember some of the stuff. But even if you didn't, I still think hearing about like how different the game was like during different times was crazy, pretty interesting. And let me know what you think the most overpowered item in Fortnite is.
Days ago, I made a video titled Revisiting Some of Fortnite's Worst Items of All Time, and you guys all really seemed to like that video, and I got a couple comments asking me to talk about some of the best, most overpowered weapons of all time. And of course, that's what we're going to be doing here today. Today, we're going to go over some of Fortnite's most overpowered weapons of all time. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So I want to talk about right away 3 submachine guns that were all ridiculously broken at launch, but have since been tuned down and nerfed. And that's going to be the P90 from Season 5, and then the drum gun as well from also Season 5, and the suppressed submachine gun. And that one is kind of an...
The TAC SMG was also busted, and this was just a... I don't know, I hope he talks about this, but this was... Actually, we'll let him play it out, and then I'll talk about it if he doesn't.
Interesting one, which I'll get to in a little bit. But firstly, the P90 from
Ridiculous.
Season 5 on launch was absolutely busted. There was no way around it. You had to carry 3 or 4 of them, and after a day, it got taken out to be reworked and fixed.
After 1 day, they patched it. Like, let that sink in. Like, now when something's busted, it takes so long for them to fix it usually. But, like, they were responded to this in 1 day. That's how, like, heated the community was. And this was, like, the first time where at least I started to see kind of, like, the Fortnite is dying trend. And people making that sort of content was, like, the Chapter 5 spray meta.
I'll put gameplay on the screen, of course. I vividly remember Daquan using this thing and just spraying. Unreal. And now the P90 has kind of come down to earth, and they fixed it and they patched it, and it's just kind of your run-of-the-mill SMG now. But when that thing came out, if you played with it, it was unbelievable. And I think the same can be said for the drum gun. When that thing launched, it was unbelievably broken, and so you had the P90, the regular SMG, and the drum gun all in the game at
I think the TAC SMG was also in
the same time. Now the drum gun, in my opinion, is one of the worst SMGs in the game, just because of its fire rate and spread and bloom and whatever. But back then, this version of the drum gun was unbelievably powerful. Everybody was carrying one, and now we see Midas's drum gun from Chapter 2, Season 2. That is kind of what the old drum gun was like. So you can imagine, you know, 70 Midas's drum guns around the map. That's kind of what it was like. And the suppressed SMG is kind of an interesting one because, of course, at launch it was just kind of your run-of-the-mill SMG. But I vividly remember a period of about a week to 2 weeks where everybody was taking the blue suppressed SMG over gold scars because of the bloom. I
was not one of those people, but that is true. Thank you for the resub powder. Enjoy your sub edge emotes and ad previewing for the 11th month. There was a period of time where a lot of people preferred the suppressed SMG because it had less bloom. And I'm just going to go ahead and talk about this now because he's talking about like Season X. The reason why the Season 5 SMGs were so ridiculously powerful was just like Epic Games not really understanding cause and effect of like their balance, because throughout like early Chapter 1 we had double pump where you could run 2 pumps back to back. You could shoot your pump, swap to the other one, shoot it, and then swap back to your first one, and it would be able to shoot again. And you could just cycle between them like that. Or you see like how Daquan right here is using pump tac. You could use double shotgun. And throughout the course of Season 4, like towards the end of it, they started nerfing the shotguns to kind of balance out double pump, and they started buffing the SMGs to be able to compete with double shotgun and kind of incentivize the shotgun SMG playstyle. And then in Season 5, when it first dropped, they just completely removed double shotgun from the game and added that kind of like countdown timer, like circle. If you shoot a shotgun and swap to another, there's a 1.5 second delay. They added that at the start of Season 5. So we had shotguns that were balanced to be used 2 at a time. And then we had SMGs that were balanced to be able to compete with 2 shotguns at a time. But you couldn't use 2 shotguns at a time. So the pumps were just miserable. And the SMGs were really, really overpowered. They didn't end up fixing shotguns, I don't think, until like towards the end of season 6. That's when they kind of like buffed pumps again and added the minimum pellet damage thing, where like if you hit 1 to 3 pellets, you got 3 pellets worth of damage, just to make them a little more consistent. And the reason why this was so controversial at the time was it was still early enough in the game where I feel like the player base was more hardcore. Like now, I know a lot of my audience is zero build players, but if you were playing Fortnite in those earlier seasons, like odds are you were a fan of building. And so when they started buffing the SMGs to just shred builds, like the player base just didn't really like it. Like I feel like the player base was more like hardcore back then. So like them doing these noob friendly updates was like very like controversial, whereas like now if they had like a newbie update or like we just had it with like the auto shotgun for a really long time, like people are more accepting of it.
Remember it being, I believe, the end of chapter 1. I could entirely be wrong about that, and of course I'll put gameplay on the screen to show what I'm talking about, but I believe that they had
okay, he says he was wrong about the suppressed SMG being used in season X. I'm guessing this is pre-season 5 then, because Daquan is at Anarchy, so this is also like late season 4.
Bloom. I remember it being, I believe, the end of chapter 1. I could entirely be wrong about that, and of course I'll put gameplay on the screen to show what I'm talking about, but I believe that they had buffed the bloom on the weapon, and so it was literally like
very
a
accurate
scar just with a faster fire rate. I'll put gameplay, of course, but I remember this thing being unbelievably strong for about a week or two, and so you can see why I wanted to put all these SMGs in a group together. And next I want to talk about, in my opinion, the best assault rifle of all time, and that is the MK7 assault rifle. Of course, recently we had the MK7 Alpha.
I know, again, a lot of my viewers started playing for Zero Build. They nerfed this weapon really hard, I think either in Chapter 3 Season 2 or before Chapter 3 Season 2. But launch Chapter 3 MK was ridiculous. And the Mythic version was also just like out of this world, one of the more overpowered Mythics ever, because it had a faster fire rate and higher damage. And then also at this time, the shotguns were very bad. And so you had a very easy to use red dot hit scan AR, which was like the first time we had like a red dot AR in Fortnite that wasn't a scoped AR. Shotguns were really bad. I agree, this should be on here. And a lot of people don't like the projectile weapons that we have in Chapter 3. And I think the reason why, or sorry, Chapter 5, I think the reason why projectile was a good change is because like when they added red dot ARs in Chapter 3, they just dominated the game and really changed Fortnite. Like Fortnite was about like close range fighting, in my opinion. That's what made Fortnite good. But like launch MK especially, like you could just nuke people across the map.
I believe it was called, but that is nowhere near what the original MK7 was like. Unbelievable fire rate, and you had the red dot sight, which personally I come from an FPS background, so I loved that. Unreal recoil. There was no recoil, it just bounced up and down slightly. Just
I think this is post nerf too, because he's playing
on controller, of course. And you were just going to beam with this thing. This is personally my favorite weapon of all time in Fortnite. And you could even use it as a sub. Like if you wanted to shoot a shotgun shot and then follow up with this weapon shot faster than almost all the SMGs. And to my knowledge, this weapon was also hit scan. So you just had your red dot on them.
I wish you had the mythic
100 to 150 meters across the map, and you could just tap fire somebody because it had no recoil. This is probably the best assault rifle of all time. I think the only one that can counter it is the AUG without a scope from, specifically, I remember Chapter 2, Season 2.
Skyscar, I think the twin mag arrow is just also illegal. Like the fact that that existed and like everyone was just chill with it, like blows my mind.
It just being absolutely,
and I used it, like I was good with it, but like holy.
Busted. But yeah, that MK7 is my favorite weapon of all time. And in my
again, this is the nerfed version. This is after the nerfs, I'm pretty sure.
Opinion, I think it is the best weapon of all time. And of course, I couldn't really talk about broken items in Fortnite history without talking about the Infinity Blade and also Thanos' Gauntlet. And so I kind of put them.
The Infinity Blade is the Gauntlet is probably the most overpowered thing ever in Fortnite history, but it's also perfect as it is, and he'll probably get into why here in a second.
Together because they're almost not really weapons. They were just kind of in a league of their own, to be honest with you. And of course, the Infinity Gauntlet.
Look at how much health Thanos has. 700 and then 140 shield, and that shield isn't even full.
Was in the Thanos LTMs, and so I don't really count that as a weapon per se, but it was, of course, unbelievably strong, unbelievably overpowered, and it was in regular Battle Royale, so it does kind of count, I guess.
No, it doesn't. Okay, so The Thanos Gauntlet, the reason why I said it was perfect is because it was only in an LTM. And this is Chapter 1, Season 4. So, if you wanted to play the Thanos mode, you readied up and played the Thanos mode. If you didn't want to deal with the Thanos Mythic being the most overpowered thing ever, then you just played regular, and all is good. And this is Chapter 1, Season 4. I feel like they had the formula, like, perfect then. Make crazy overpowered stuff and then make it in an LTM, and you can make it how overpowered you want to make it, and it's more fun because the only people playing it are the people who are down with that. I feel like the avatar items they had this season, if they made like an avatar only LTM, I feel like everybody would have been happy with that. They could have made them as crazy as possible, and if you wanted to play avatar, you played avatar. If you didn't want to play with it, you didn't want to play with it. Even Star Wars, they could make like incredibly overpowered Star Wars stuff, make it a game mode, and people, like, it doesn't need to be balanced if it's a game mode, you know? And they kind of went away from this and started putting like the collab items and the overpowered items into the regular loot pool. And I feel like that made it worse for the people who like crazy stuff. And it also made it worse for people who just like the more bare bones version of the game. I think making it an LTM is like an everybody wins situation. And he's going to talk about the Infinity Blade in a second.
Yes, and the same thing can be said for the Infinity Blade. This thing was added. You just rip through everything. In the original
it just spawned on the map like that, and you had to go pick it up.
Versions, you could build, you would gain health back with the Infinity Blade. I mean,
look at all these
there's
people
no question
dying
about it. These two, you knew were going to...
They added this like the morning of a big tournament, and everyone was pissed about it because it was in the regular loot pool. If Infinity Blade was an LTM, it would have been one of the more like positive, exciting updates ever in Fortnite, because the only people who would have played it would have been people who really wanted to play against that overpowered item and have a crazy time. But for some reason they put it in the regular loot pool, and then because of that, the people who want the regular game are mad, and then the people who want crazy stuff are mad because it gets nerfed and removed within like a relatively short time. I think it was only in for a week or two.
To be on here if we're talking about overpowered stuff in Fortnite history.
It is insane,
so
though.
There's not really much for me to say. The gameplay, of course, will speak for itself, and if you were here during this time, you understand how strong these things were. And of course, on the thumbnail of this video, we had the Havoc pump shotgun from Chapter 4, Season 2. That was mega, and wow. In my opinion, I never thought that we would ever see a shotgun better than the Spaz, but in my opinion, this is the best shotgun of all time and could definitely be the best weapon of all time. And let's not forget, this was also in a season with the Kinetic Blade, which I think you could also make an argument for being one of the best utility slash, mobility items of all time. And so combining those two was unbelievably strong. I mean, you could just Kinetic Blade right on top of somebody, drop inside their box, and hit them for an easy 180, 190. Like, the thing that made this weapon so good was the tight pellet spread. And so, if you were going to hit a shot, you were going to hit for...
And the body damage. The body damage of the Havoc pump was ridiculous, and that's what made it so good. Because, like, the way the shotguns work in this game, and this is simple, but, like, you shoot a spread of pellets, and then you get damage based on how many pellets you hit. The pellets that hit to the head get, like, the headshot multiplier. And that's why sometimes you'll shoot a shotgun and you'll get, like, a 30 damage headshot. It's because one pellet hit the head, so it registers as a headshot. But all your pellets didn't hit to the head. And so with the Havoc pump, you could hit a little bit of pellets to the head and the rest of the body and still get like really good damage. And I think that's what made it so consistent and so good. Obviously, the Mythic could hit for 250, which a lot of zero build players didn't like because they didn't want one hits in the game. I didn't really mind it that much. Pumps one hit in Fortnite from like the launch of the game until the end of Chapter 2. So it was like 4 years of pumps one hitting. I'm used to it. But the Mythic Havoc was ridiculous in build mode, because in builds you only have 200 health. So if a perfect shot is over 250, you could hit like a 7 out of 10 shot, a 6 out of 10 shot, and still like 200 to somebody. Maybe not like 6 out of 10, but you could hit like a non-perfect shot and still 200. I feel like if they're going to have one hit pumps in the game, it should have to be a perfect shot. Like all pellets to the head within ideal range. And then I really liked the shotgun because I started playing the game again at the end of Chapter 2, and then Chapter 3, the pumps were really bad. And like the pumps being good is a major part of like what makes Fortnite to me. Like when I think of Fortnite, I think of the pump shotgun. Like some people think of the ARs or the snipers. to me, Fortnite is the shotgun combat. That's what it does better than any other game. And when it's just like spammy shotguns or pumps that aren't very good, it's not as fun to play. And that has like really impacted Chapter 5 for me. But with Chapter 4, Season 1, and Seasons 2 and 3, we had like good pumps again. And that like definitely like made me happy with the direction the game was going in after Chapter 3.
80, 90, 100 every single time. Like rarely did you use the Havoc and hit for, you know, your 30s or 40s that you might see with, you know, the pump from previous seasons. The
Chapter 5 pump, we were hitting for like 12. If you hit like one pellet, you got one pellet. And the pumps were terrible because of them being balanced around double pump.
Sounded good. It felt good. You know, I remember myself consistently, again, hitting for 160s, 170s.
It was also really easy to get a good one because you had the mythics and the vault, but also we had combat caches that season. And if you got to your combat cache early, you could get like a purple or gold, but the worst you could get out of cache was a blue one. And with this season having katanas, it was really easy to get around the map.
70s, 180s. This is better
and
than
get to your cache early.
In my opinion, it is the best shotgun we've ever seen and probably will ever see. I don't know if they'll ever go to a pump being this strong ever again.
I would like for the Havoc pump to come back or like similar, but like I don't think it has to be that good for the pump to be enjoyable to use. I feel like the hammer pump is like almost good enough. Like it just needs a little buff. I think a little bit of a fire rate buff on the hammer pump and it would be perfect because then you could cycle between hammer pump and burst sub like fluidly. The thing about it is now when you shoot hammer pump and then go to burst sub, shoot one burst and then swap back to the pump, it's not quite ready to shoot yet and it just kind of like ruins the timing.
And of course, I'm not even talking about the mythic here, right? Like the mythic in and of itself, of course, was going to be absolutely busted. And that was a free 250 plus. I mean, this thing was unbelievably strong. So just combining the base version and the mythic, I mean, you know, one of the best weapons of all time for sure. Another weapon that was on the thumbnail of this video was the Shockwave Hammer.
So good.
And I think the Shockwave Hammer is kind of hit or miss personally because it was super, super strong, don't get me wrong, and it used to be even more strong than it currently is. On launch, the Shockwave Hammer had 4 hits instead.
And look, you could hold several of them and they would all cool down independently. So right here, he has 16 hammer dashes.
3, so people could escape really more easily. And the problem with the hammer for me was just, I felt like you would just shoot somebody once and they would just be gone. True. And they would just leave. And
also that was annoying. The fact that the hammer as a melee weapon would just send people away was frustrating because if you tag someone and they run away and then you start chasing them, they just turn and hammer you. And then like that fight is just like stalled out. But the katana was a lot more balanced because it was good mobility. It wouldn't break through structures or walls. And you couldn't just like use the melee aspect to send somebody away from you. And like you guys know Fortnite players, like anything that will prevent a fight, they're down for it, you know?
That added to how strong it was. You could just get out of any fight whenever you wanted to. It
was a lot of fun, but it was very unbalanced. The only thing balancing this weapon was the amount of bugs that season. Like there was a lot of bugs with the Shockwave Hammer where like sometimes it would like grief your sprint afterwards and then you wouldn't be able to sprint again until you dash with the hammer again. I think there was like a weapon swap bug with it at a certain time. Like the bugs were the only like drawback to using this item, or like the only like somewhat like balancing act about it.
We're in a box with somebody and you wanted to get out, boom, left trigger, you're gone, you're done for. You know what I'm saying? Or you also have the effect where you could just legit smack them with the hammer. They'd go flying back. You do, you know, 100+ damage.
I miss this gas station, bro. This was like one of the craziest spots on the Chapter 4 map.
And let's
for
not
some
forget,
reason, like everyone was always
when you
rotating
used to
there.
leave fights, if you were in a box with somebody and you would, you know, press the ability to you know, jump or bounce with the hammer.
Also, one of the more frustrating things about this was it was kind of inconvenient to get at times, and it made it to where like if you didn't get one, you probably weren't gonna have a fun game. But like, I liked the unlimited use mobility items. Like sure, you could argue it's less strategic or whatever, but I think getting your mobility item and then just being able to play the game and just run around and fight people was a lot of fun.
That would do damage to them. That would actually do damage. And so the only thing that I can really drag on for the hammer was the animation once you were done swinging and your hammer was in the ground.
That's true, but also the bugs for it just made it sometimes frustrating to use, but yeah.
Took forever. So if you did not hit somebody, if you swung the hammer at them and you missed them, you were basically a sitting duck. And I think that's kind of how they were trying to balance it. but I felt like it didn't matter because the radius was so large.
No, I want those pickup trucks back. When somebody was running from you in the pickup truck, you could like get in the back and then just shoot them. It was nice.
If you were just like anywhere near somebody, your hammer would connect with them and would send them back and do a ton of damage. So I think it was super fun, super strong, and of course we're probably never going to see the Shockwave hammer ever again, which is so sad to say, but it was a really fun time, and I think it's one of the strongest utility / weapons of all time. I also can't make a overpowered weapons video without talking about some OG weapons, so let's talk about the OG pump, and I'm talking about Chapter 1, the early seasons
sniper
of
pump.
Chapter 1, and
it had like unlimited range in the super early days, and it was kind of crazy.
And also the Scar. And in terms of the Scar, it's actually seen a massive fall from grace. The Chapter 4 Scar was awful. The Striker this season or last season, I guess, is just a kind of worse version of the Scar. But the Chapter 1 season, 2, 3 Scar was unbelievable. And if you remember, this weapon used to have the headshot multiplier, I believe it was 2.5 times. So instead of hitting for a 70 headshot, I believe on a headshot this Scar was doing.
Yeah, so the early days there was no first shot accuracy, and the ARs had a higher headshot multiplier. I think the gray AR had like 80 or 88. But when they added first shot accuracy, they ended up reducing like the headshot multiplier. So like the super early days of Fortnite were crazy because the ARs were just completely random. Like you could never have it perfectly accurate. There's always going to be bloom. Like, you know how you use the E11 this season, and no matter how long you stand still, it never gets first shot accuracy? That's how every AR was in the game. But also, they would headshot for 90 plus. So it was like very, very, very random. And then they ended up adding first shot accuracy where like you could control your fire rate to kind of control the accuracy of the weapon. But in that update, they also reduced the headshot multiplier. But the early days were so random.
Almost 80 to 90 damage. I could be wrong. I'm going to find the clip and I'll put it
it's 98. Up. Like they were hitting for 98 here. See? 98.
Weapon used to have the headshot multiplier.
Shield was also very hard to get. Early Fortnite, there was only big pots. So, you guys played during OG. You saw how hard it was to get shield, even when there was slurp juice and minis. Very early days, big pots were the only shield item. Like 98 headshot on a Scar was just like insane.
I believe it was 2.5 times. So instead of hitting for a 70 headshot, I believe on a headshot this Scar was doing almost 80 to 90 damage. I could be wrong. I'm gonna find the clip and I'll put it up. But you could 3-tap somebody with this Scar, and I
this
think
also made the scoped AR really OP because, like I said, these ARs didn't get first shot accuracy. You see, he has the scoped AR here. I wonder if he's gonna use it. But the scoped AR would also headshot for like 90 something. I think there wasn't even mushrooms back then, in like the launch version of the game. I don't think the food and forageables came until like season 5. But yeah, like the scoped AR was also insane during this time because it was like the only accurate AR. Snipers were also like very meta because of bloom, and like the way the fact that the ARs didn't have first shot actually really limited the range you could use them at, and then it made snipers very viable. But that's also what made the close range fighting like that. The AR's accuracy and building is what made close range fighting like so key to Fortnite. And I think as someone who started playing in the second day it came out, that's why like the close range fighting is what Fortnite is to me.
I think everyone here who's probably watching this video has played with that version of the Scar. That
Snipers were very hard to use though. There's a lot of bullet drop.
Everybody remembers it. That thing was unbelievable and probably a top 3 AR of all time. And the pump, there's really nothing for me to say here. This thing was just unreal. You all remember the clips of Ninja and those guys hitting for 160 or 180 from 20 meters away. Double pump. I mean, I can't even talk about it because it was just that strong. That
was why they nerfed the pumps.
You had to kind of be there to experience it. You were having common and green pumps hit for 220 damage. I mean, need I say more? Like, it was just that
45.
strong. And so I'll let the gameplay kind of talk for itself, but it was just unbelievable. I can't even imagine that being in today's game. But yeah, I mean, it was just so strong. I also wanted to throw the old heavy sniper onto this list because that thing was an absolute animal. And if you don't remember,
completely agree.
This heavy sniper on launch was hitting for, I believe, 156 and 158. I mean, you're hitting somebody and then you just follow up, tap them once with the AR, and they're dead. But now we've seen the heavy sniper, longer reload time. We're not one-shotting all builds. You know, we're doing 120 damage. Like, yeah, it's still a lot, but like nothing what it used to be. And I remember the big thing, double heavy snipe. Double heavy snipe was huge. You have one of your buddies ping the wall, snipe the wall, and then
that happened to one of my friends in the fall skirmish, I think, or maybe it was a summer skirmish. It was one of like the early Fortnite tournaments. I got like double heavied, like on the main broadcast, I think.
You would follow up and just insta headshot somebody for 380 damage. I mean, it was ridiculous. That sniper is the best sniper of all time. Now, currently, I would actually probably say the Hunter Bolt or even the Reaper are probably the best.
Yeah, the Reaper is insane because you can get attachments on it, but like what made the heavy so ridiculous was, like I said, the Bolt had like a lot of bullet drop, so it was very hard to use. Like if you watch old Fortnite Bolt sniper gameplay, like they're leading an insane amount, even more than now with the Reaper sniper being nerfed like 80 times. But the heavy sniper had like very minimal bullet drop and 150 body damage, so you didn't even need to get a headshot. Like a lot of people were running around at 150 HP because that's how minis could get you. You didn't have to lead very much, and it one-shot walls. Like, it was just ridiculous. I feel like how easy it was to use and how much it rewarded body shots. Whereas the regular Bolt, only 100 damage on body shots and a lot more bullet drop.
Snipers of all time. We've seen a heavy fall from grace from the heavy sniper, unfortunately. But on launch and for a solid couple of months, that was the best sniper of all time.
In Chapter 2, Season 2, FNCS, I think me and Sammy were landing at Holly and then going to one of the shadow locations nearby because you could get heavy snipers exclusively out of those drops. Like they weren't in the regular loot pool, but you could get them out of the shadow chest. And it was just like, even into like early 2020, it was still like ridiculous and like very like game defining.
And we're talking about broken guns on launch. Let's talk about the Season 9 combat shotgun at launch.
Another gun that like really rewarded body damage, and they vaulted the pump for this. This was the first time they ever vaulted the pump.
And this was a big deal for a couple of reasons. I believe this was the first time they ever actually vaulted the pump shotgun. I could be wrong, but they did vault the pump, and so of course they had to follow it up with another strong shotgun. But the problem was they went a little overboard, and the Season 9 combat shotgun was absolutely ridiculous. The range, I remember watching on the launch of the season, Daquan use that combat shotgun, and I think it was 90 to 100.
I think it was like broken at first, and then they had to buff it. But like the thing about it was that like you look at this
100 meters, and
you see how tight the pellet spread is.
Was still hitting.
Like the reticle is very small, so that made it very consistent, and it had like really good body damage and a really good fire rate. So you could just like spam out body shots and not really have to hit a headshot, and do good. I think like gold max like was 144 to the head and like 90 something to the body. So like sure the headshots were more damage, but you could just easily be consistent and spam out body shots and do very good. And it was the highest fire rate shotgun in the game at the time.
It was,
and again, it was the first time they ever vaulted the pump, and they vaulted it for this like high range, very consistent like body damage spammy shotgun. So a lot of people were mad that like Epic was kind of griefing the skill gap of the game. They ended up unvaulting the pump a few weeks later. I think they unvaulted it during Season 9 because it was in World Cup. And people still just kept using the combat over the pump. But initially everyone was like throwing a fit because the pump was vaulted for this.
Unbelievable. The gold combat shotgun with the tight pellet spread was 100 damage guaranteed.
Like, was it 100 to the body? Okay.
Unreal. Super fast fire rate. Every time you would reload, it would reload 2 shells.
Also with L2 spam aim assist, it was like very insane.
And of course they had to nerf it, which they did. And now the current combat shotgun, in my opinion, is one of the worst of all time. But if you
yeah, I think they nerfed it in like Chapter 2 Season 4, but like this is Chapter 1 Season 9. So if you guys played in like Chapter 4 with the combat, it was okay, but it was like nothing special. That was like a heavily nerfed version.
That combat shotgun, you know how good and how strong
why does he have so many
that
of them?
Shotgun was. And again, in my opinion, the Season 9 combat shotgun on launch is probably a top 3 shotgun of all time. There's no question about it. And for my final selection of this video, I think you could honestly go with any of the mythics from Chapter 2 Season 2, but in my opinion, I think the best was Brutus's minigun. Tight bullet spread, unbelievable fire rate, of course, because you're using a minigun. You're loaded with bullets. You could just spray anybody. And I think you could really go with...
Bro's got multiple miniguns.
Sky's assault rifle if you wanted to here as well. or her grappler.
So yeah, all the mythics in Chapter 2 Season 2 were kind of busted aside from the Boombo. This was like the first time they ever had mythics, I think, or at least mythics like this. I was never the biggest fan of the minigun, even when they first added it in like Chapter 1 Season 2. Like, I just didn't like it as much as other people. I think Sky in general was just ridiculous because the Scar got bonus damage and bonus fire rate. And when you affect both of those stats, the gun gets a lot better. And also she had the unlimited grappler in a season with not very much mobility. I think the only mobility in the game was like launch pads, crash pads, and this grappler. So if you had this grappler, that was like a ridiculous advantage. And I think the player that won the solo FNCS that season was landing at Sky. And then obviously the Midas drum gun was also like very ridiculous. The heavy AR mythic was kind of eh. The Deadpool pistols were kind of eh. And then the Boombo was kind of eh. But like these four, the Scar, the grappler, the minigun, and the drum gun were all like insane.
Or Midas's drum gun, which I had mentioned earlier. Not TNT's Kaboombo, I don't think. But, you know, again, they were just
like now mythics are like a nice bonus. Like, sure, it would be nice to have the mythic gatekeeper shotgun. But like a lot of these mythics, I guess mainly the drum gun. It was like the only way to get it was the mythic. It felt very game impacting, like the medallions do now. Like if you have Grim Gate Medallion, you have a huge advantage. That's how it felt having like Sky Scar, Sky Grappler. If you got the drum gun as well, like
strong, and they're mythic, so of course they're supposed to be. I think they went a little overboard with Brutus's because if you had that thing,
aim assist was also the strongest it's ever been this season, and so having a lot of spray mythics was like very OP for controller.
You were basically guaranteed to win, and that's why the Grotto was such a hot drop. I remember me and my boys would drop retail and then loot up and then go straight to Grotto to try and third party. Yes, we were those guys. Try and third party and get Brutus's minigun because it was basically just a guaranteed win. So I think any weapon that you get that you can basically say to yourself, okay, we're going to win this game once we get this, that is a sign that it is absolutely broken and overpowered, and we'll never see Brutus's minigun come back in the same form at least.
Allegedly, we're getting Chapter 2 OG this season. Or, sorry, this year. At the end of the year, we'll get Chapter 2 OG. And so we might get to experience some of these mythics again. I agree they probably won't be as insane as they were then, but that'll be interesting.
It was just that strong. So yeah, this is just kind of a revisitation of some of Fortnite's strongest
179 on a green pump.
Did I miss any? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you guys want to comment some other weapons that you felt were super overpowered, I know, of course, I missed a few. I would definitely make a part 2 to this video. So if you guys want to...
So, some other ones that were very overpowered. Exotic Maven is up there. I think the Exotic Maven shotgun from Chapter 4 is ridiculous. If you guys didn't play, the Maven shotgun was like a spammy high fire rate shotgun. But the exotic version got boosted fire rate once you hit somebody with it. And it increased your movement speed. And then with augments, there's an augment that made it to where your shotgun shots had a chance to not consume ammo that went great with that. There's also Shotgun Siphon as an augment, which made it to where you gained HP or shield immediately upon hitting somebody with a shotgun, and Shotgun Siphon with the Exotic Maven was very busted. Also, just the RPG for all of Chapter 1. Like, he talked earlier about how, like, you get a weapon and then you feel like you're winning the game. That was how RPGs felt in the early days. Like, once you got an RPG, the play then was just to accumulate rockets. There was no cap on rockets, and the RPGs were just random. Later on, like towards the end of Chapter 1, they made it to where RPGs were in supply drops only. And then they also capped the rocket limit to 12. But in like seasons 4, 5, 6, like, or 3, 4, 5, 6, like it wasn't uncommon for endgame somebody to have like 80 rockets just spamming them at you. Or in duos, have multiple people with RPGs and 50 plus rockets just spamming them at you over and over and over again. But yeah, I think this list was very good. I wish he would have talked more about how like the Thanos mode being an LTM was like the perfect solution that they had in like the very early days. I think that's like a very big like what if for Fortnite. If they kept kind of making overpowered items like that and making it an LTM, I think it's a win-win for everybody. But like forcing it into the regular playlist, I feel like just makes everybody mad. And I think the avatar items we had this season would have been a very good LTM because you have like the water bending for range, you have air bending mobility, earth bending for cover, and then fire is like a melee weapon. Like each of them are uniquely different enough to warrant an LTM. And I think that would have been a really good, like a really fun game mode for people who are a fan of that series. But that is going to be it for this video. Let me know which item you think was left off the list, or which item you think is most overpowered in Fortnite. Again, his channel will be linked in the description below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.